Dear viewers, wherever you are, hello and welcome to this new episode of Out of the Box. During the previous episodes, we started with the beginning and inception of philosophy in the School of Athens. And we talked about the founders of the school, Socrates and his most prominent student, Plato. Today, we'll be talking about students also, but this time, not the student of Socrates, but the student of Plato. We'll be talking about Aristotle, who happened to be the most prominent student of Plato. However, he did not exactly follow the path of his teacher. He rebelled in some aspects. Tonight, we'll be talking about his views on rhetoric, on discussion, and most importantly, about metaphysics. I'm really delighted tonight to be joined by, I would not really call my guest because he's the owner of a place or co-owner of the place of the program, the prominent freelance journalist and writer, Imad Barsoum. Imad, hello and welcome to the program once more.
Yeah. Nice. Thank you so much, Mohammed, for this introduction. And again, it's an honor to be a part of your wonderful program and the wonderful idea that you're presenting now. So thank you so much.
That's so nice of you. That's so nice of you. The pleasure is definitely all mine as usual.
Thank you.
So Imad, to start off, Aristotle talked about rhetoric and speech and conviction. And he was saying that there are mainly three paths for conviction or for speech. If you want to convince someone through rhetoric, there are three major paths that you can take. The first path is logic, which he called logos. So use logic, use proof to demonstrate something, to convey an idea, to convince people about it. The second way is what he called ethos. And ethos is using credibility, the position of someone. So if I am a man of high status, whether it's a religious status, social status, or political status, the likelihood of people believing me and following me would be much higher than a layman. Maybe the layman might say something that is much better, but his words will fall on deaf ears. Because who are you to tell us something? The third thing is pathos, which depends on passion and feelings. So something that is very sentimental. So when you hear a word from your son is very different than hearing the word from a stranger. You're psychologically, emotionally connected to your son. So the likelihood of you believing your son or following your son is much higher than other people. In your opinion, how do you perceive this analysis of Aristotle? And to what extent is this still valid today?
Well, actually, I consider this triangle of Aristotle, the pathos, logos, and ethos, is a very advanced and progressive way of thinking at that time. Because in those three elements of the triangle, he has already defined and analyzed the human beings and found out what could make them be convinced or how to influence them with an idea through one of those three elements. So what he did, actually, he paved the way for politicians, number one, religious people, number two, and also other kind of teachers, for instance, and last, lawyers. All of these lines of activities or line of jobs or roles in life used Aristotle's triangle to dominate. And I want to say dominate because they have played on these fine things about human beings to convey a message or to direct their mind and way of thinking to where they want to go.
Would you say it's a means of patronizing other people?
It is more of not patronizing, it's more of controlling their mind. It's of brainwash as well. Especially when we talk about the pathos, for instance. People, when they listen to the voice of pathos or this passion, I would say the normal people, the ordinary man, when a leader stands in front of them and tells them how he cares about them so much, and he is the one that's sent by God to help them to succeed in life, this parental attitude, any man would listen to this rhetoric with lots of passion as well. So that's how I would say that it is more of a way of convincing and directing the minds of the listeners to what he wants them to go. And same the way as of the other two elements as well. So it depends on the receiver of the rhetoric. For instance, I would use with you, for instance, one of those depends on your mindset and how I understand your opinion. So for instance, I would talk to you, Muhammad, with the logos, because you are a very well-educated person. You are analytic. You have an analytical mind, so I can talk to you through the logos. And based on this, you can apply it on all other three elements as well.
So it's a way of manipulation that a lot of people use to manipulate other people.
It's more manipulation than actually a way of convincing with good intent.
And in your opinion today, like in our day and age today, what is the percentage of, like each element with relation to the other, like logos, ethos, and pathos? Like how many percent of people today listen to logic? How many listen to passion? And how many listen to credibility?
I would think that credibility has the least percentage nowadays, because people tend to doubt anything, especially when it comes from the authorities. And I would use this analogy now of the COVID, because many people in the world, they think that it's a conspiracy. So no matter what you talk to them about ethos, they will not listen to it. They doubt the credibility of all the authorities in the world, actually. So this is the least one of them. Logos also comes second because it talks only, or it is directed only to the people with logical thinking. And this has to do also with the level of knowledge and education. So the more education knowledge you have, the more you think in a logical way. So what is left for us is ethos. And, pathos. Pathos is the one that has the more tendency to affect people now, because people in pathos also, you can give them hope for things they cannot see and touch and feel. And you can see it in all the religious institutes around the world, how this works very well to control and to guide people for a certain direction in life. So I would say pathos would take about 50%, and 30% for logos, and 20% for ethos.
I think that history also really reflects what you just said. If we were to refrain from talking about, this time, but if we talk about the past, not the very old past, but the near past, you would have people like Adolf Hitler, Benito Mussolini in Italy, you'd have General Franco in Spain. All those people use this very sentimental rhetoric. So starting with Mein Kampf, like the book that Adolf Hitler wrote, and he describes, it's a book that is full of, hatred to the Jews, for instance, for the non-Aryans. In his very first chapter, he describes how evil and wicked those people are. But then he plays on the sentiments of the Aryans and of the Germans and of the pure race and so on. Plays on the emotions. And then on his speeches, he would talk that we will continue to fight until all the world bows to the Third Reich. Benito Mussolini would say that, we will spread our control on earth and then we'll take the fascist flag to the stars, and people would, start clapping. a lot of people were really, when you have this passion, and it's one of the best ways of propaganda. Adolf Hitler, again, he had his minister of propaganda, I wouldn't say of information or Goebbels, and he said lie and lie and lie until people believe you.
Believe, yes.
And he made the film The Eternal Jew, and this film is extreme propaganda against the Jewish people, just to justify he had the intention of to annex Poland.
Yes.
But he wanted to give a good intention, that I want to cleanse Poland out of this filth. And unfortunately, we've seen this time and again. And on the other side, we've seen propaganda by the Allied forces through even cartoons. We've seen Donald Duck. We've seen Bugs Bunny in cartoons that, depict them in situations with Nazis and with Japanese, fighters, and they would just make fun of them in a very ridiculous way.
Yes.
And also playing on the sentiments, very much so. Aristotle talked about a very important thing in his two books, Physics and Metaphysics. He started talking about this life and the metaphysical life. But he had a specific or special view of things for metaphysics. Let's stop with our viewers for a few minutes with this short report, and then when we come back, we will discuss. Please stay tuned.
Thank you.
In his book Metaphysics, Aristotle speaks of the first cause of all motion in the universe. In his book Metaphysics, Aristotle describes the first cause as completely beautiful, indivisible, and the source of all ideals and abstract values. In his book, Aristotle argues that there must be an immortal, unchanging being ultimately responsible for all perfection and order in the sensible world. He goes on to say that it is clear then that there is no place, no void, or time outside the sky. Hence, the first cause does not occupy any place, nor does it age by time. There is no change in any of the things within itself. The first cause is of an intangible substance that has neither parts nor volume. Therefore, it would be virtually impossible for him to move physical objects of any size by pushing, pulling, or collision. But the only logical way in which he can move these objects is by impact or by orders. The first cause must be intellectual in nature and cannot be physical and dependent on perception. The first sky, containing the planets and fixed stars, moves to simulate the first cause. Concerning the number of first causes or rulers of the universe, he concluded in his book by saying, "The rule of many is not good, so let there be only one ruler." Aristotle says that only matter can change. As for the absolute ideals that arise from the first cause, they are without substance. When a person is born on earth, the first cause casts its origin in the world of ideals on his body, made of matter in the sensory world, and thus becomes a human being.
Dear viewers, after watching this report, we're back again with you. And Emad, to start with, discussing this report, In your opinion, if we were to analyze the metaphysical ideas of Aristotle using Aristotle's method of ethos, logos, and pathos, which of these do you think Aristotle depended on while making his assumptions about metaphysics and about the creation of the universe?
Well, actually, again, I would repeat one thing I said earlier, that Aristotle has been very progressive in his way of thinking. When he wrote about the metaphysics in his book about the creation, about how they came to existence, how things are now controlled in life, even when he was describing the plants and animals, how they behave and how they grow and nourish in his theory of metaphysics. He has used things that paved the way again to science as well, how to consider, how to observe, realize, and analyze to come to this theory. So again, he was genius in that, regardless of his way of measuring, because these measures were based on non-scientific ways. But Aristotle, being a polymath guy, that means he has so many sciences and knowledges that he possesses, including music and art and philosophy, of course, and science and botany and zoology. He was great in creating or linking all his observations together with the nature and also with the art. And this is the beauty of it, that he also combined art in this, I would say, this great saga of his that is the metaphysics.
So you think he had like rather a more comprehensive knowledge, an all-encompassing knowledge?
He collected everything around us in one thing, and he used those elements of the triangle beside the other three elements or the other three measurements of his theory on which he based his book as well, or most his books, which is the goodness, the truth, and the beauty. Yeah. Which again, it's the science, the art, and the ethics.
Yeah, good, truth, beauty, justice are things that he also, I believe, received from his teacher, Plato.
He received, but yes, 100% I agree with you. But Aristotle, he could use them in a different way.
Absolutely.
His theory. So actually, he makes them work for him in a different way. He made them look real. Because even if you think about it for a second, the goodness is the art. Sorry, the beauty is the art. The goodness is the ethics. And the truth is the logic as well, because truth is logic. So I mean, in a way, this is how I feel about it. This is my opinion, by the way. And I think that he has used those three elements with the other elements of Plato, his teacher, but to employ them in a more convincing and more practical way to understand life in general.
Okay, so you think he gave a rather more objective, more logical analysis of things, and more down-to-earth analysis, rather than what Plato did. Plato was rather more mystic in his views, rather than Aristotle. Now, Aristotle, when he talked about metaphysics, he talked about the first cause, and he found some attributes or necessary attributes for this first cause. So this first cause is eternal, everlasting, has no beginning, has no end. And this really resonates with the first and the last, the Alpha and the Omega, so which are words that are found in books like the Quran or the New Testament or the Old Testament, etc., or like many different religious texts today include things like, the beginning, the end, the first, the last, the Alpha, the Omega. And he said that he is the creator of time, so he cannot be bound by something he created. And he also he doesn't have any dimensions. So he's out of the X, Y, Z, dimensions. He doesn't have a length, width, or, height.
Yes.
So it's not possible for him to be bound by dimension because he's beyond these things. He's the creator of all these things. And he is the source of the essence of everything. Yes. He holds the essence of everything. He holds the most supreme values, like, love, truth, justice, and beauty. And he talked also about something like, he did not call the spirit, but he talked about the essence of us being found, and then this essence descends to earth and unites with our physical body to create us. But you and I are not really this flesh and blood. We are mostly what's within, the essence, or the non-materialistic part of us. So here comes a very important question. According to many religious people, or maybe the more classic, or in some other people's views, the more orthodox views of religion, logic is not enough. It will never suffice for you to reach the creator. But here, Aristotle, through the use of logic, and he's non-religious, he doesn't believe in any religion at all. He came after Moses, but he was not interested at all in Moses's teachings, and he definitely was before Christ. But he almost reached the same conclusion. How do you see? Do you see a connection here? Do you see, is like reaching the creator, the first cause? Is it necessary to be through revelation, or is it possible through logic, like Aristotle said?
Absolutely. What you said, Muhammad, now actually give as if I was reading a book about religion. So Aristotle, his ideas, again, paved the way for some religions, which has lots of similarity and resemblance in the way it goes, especially when you talked about the essence, because he considered, Aristotle, that the material, it does not define us. And that's what the religions say, that we are not eternal bodies. Our bodies are going to an end. But the eternal is the soul, which is the essence, according to Aristotle. So what he defined, in a way, or paved the way again for religious, I would say, rhetoric, for instance. And the proof of this, that he was also viewed as a very important philosopher for the Christianity and Islam as well, at the same time.
Absolutely.
In the medieval ages of Islam, he was considered really a great philosopher. Unlikely for religious people to describe a philosopher as great, or they can learn from him, or because they see philosophy as a pagan or non-religious way of thinking. But also in Christianity, according to lots of monks, especially the Orthodox, and even the Catholic Church, they see Aristotle as one of their inspiring philosophers, how to convey the message to the listeners. Again, we go back to the first thing he talked about, the three elements of the rhetoric.
So,
and is the rhetoric, actually.
This is very interesting what you're saying, because these are facts, really. So during the Middle Ages, during the times of, we can see someone like Saint Augustine, for example, or Saint Augustinus in the Christian side, or someone like Thomas Aquinas, the Christian side too. Saint Augustinus, or Saint Augustine, he had a Platonic point of view. He used the philosophy of Plato in a more religious context. Then Thomas Aquinas was Aristotelian. On the other hand, in Islam, We have people like Avicenna, we have people like Averroes or Ibn Sina and Ibn Rushd, and several others again, who had Platonic, and then later on, they always, in both religions, the first thinkers start Platonic, and then the newer generations become Aristotelian. The same thing as Plato came before Aristotle. But today, and later on, like these ideas are not very much welcome today. Like this connection, like someone like Averroes or Ibn Rushd, and he came a little bit before Thomas Aquinas. He said that there should never be any contradiction between logic and revelation. And if there is, this means that there is a misunderstanding. But as you and I know, unfortunately, someone like Averroes or Ibn Rushd was not welcomed by the mainstream. And he was said to be he was considered to be blasphemous. People said that what you're saying is blasphemy, it's heresy. And several of his books were burnt, and so on and so forth. Then later on, we have someone like Thomas Aquinas in Europe who talks about very similar ideas as well. But today we don't have this, like in the modern world today in 2021, in the 21st century.
Yes.
Why don't we accept such logic?
That's a very interesting question, actually, because that defines lots of changes in the history of religion among nations as well. And typically, if you look at any theological system or regime, we'll find that they do not want to use any of the three options or three elements of the rhetoric of Aristotle to convey their message to people, because people now, they are not children anymore. They have more logic of thinking, and they might not accept their speech. They might not accept their narrative. So what they do now, the religious authorities in different regimes, they tend to force their ideas directly to the people without giving them a chance to object or discuss or even question, which is very actually ironic, because you find that religions and all their scientists and researchers in the medieval ages and the beginning and the dawn of all religions had much rich discussions, and it was very, very vivid and life at that time. It was considered as philosophy as well. However, the more we go into history and progress in time, we come to the near days now, we found out that actually religions are even backwards more than what it was before. So yes, they cannot accept those things these days because simply people will not listen to them or they object them. So they want the citizens of any theological regime just to obey and listen and follow. Because if they shake one of these pillars they have, the whole system will fall as well with them. So
again, like from another point of view, because we would entertain and accept all kinds of views in this program, and definitely all views are equally welcome here. Another point of view might tell you, actually, the contradiction does not come from the revelation or from the religious text, because actually there are a lot of words and sentences and orders from the divine in many of these like holy texts that implore people to think, to explore, to discuss, to use their minds. So actually, the text calls on logos, while the interpreters of the texts and the religious authorities are the ones who deviated from the right path, and they tweaked the essence of the religious texts and gave it an emotional flavor. And they also cared so much about the creation of a clergy, like the power of the men of religion. So they are the ones who created the ethos and the pathos, while the religious text calls for logos. So this is what someone like Ibn Rushd would have said. So there's no real contradiction, because many atheists today, or many deists today, or many skeptics today, say that I cannot follow any religious text because this religious text is full of illogical things. But in reality, the problem is not in the text. The problem is in the interpretation that is illogical. To what extent do you agree with this, analysis?
Okay, this is, again, it might carry lots of opinions here from my side as well, because if I discuss it from the logical point of view, well, this is not certain. Because the revelation, for instance, you stated, Muhammad, that it is logical text. However, I see it as not a logical text. It's more of a fairy tale, or more of a dream of somebody. Okay, that's how I feel it when I read it, regardless of what the content means to anybody. So this mainly is not a logical text. The interpreters of it used the pathos to convey it to the receivers from the people, the public, but also they used their ethos as well in it, which dominated the speech, because the interpretation and the explanation of the revelation is coming from people of high respect to the listeners. Mm-hmm. They are the figures of the religion, and actually the guardians of the religion as well. So when you listen to the guardian of a religion, and I'm a humble person, of course, I would listen to what he's trying to tell me based on ethos, more than logos or pathos. So it is really, really tricky, this area. And again, depends on the receiver of the speech. For someone who is already studying philosophy and knowledge and history, would not take these things based on ethos or pathos. It's going to take it, receive it, and analyze it based on logos. That's why they cannot talk with logos to those kind of people. So they do not consider them as their people. Those figures, the religious figures, they do not want to deal with those kind of people who would listen to the logos only.
Okay, so the rebuttal, or like the other side of like the flip of that coin would be, by logic, even someone like Aristotle proved that he did not call the divine, but the first cause or the first creator is omnipotent, is omniscient, all-knowing, omnipresent. He's everywhere. He's invincible. No one can stop him. These are exactly the same attributes that religion talks about.
Yes, that's it.
So from a religious perspective, it would tell you that definitely there is no way that you can comprehend the wisdom of the divine without him, without revelation. Because just like your sight cannot contain the divine, because he is, we as humans, or any animal or any creature, there is a specific spectrum that you can see. We have the infrared and the ultraviolet. there are many things out there that we cannot see, that is beyond our spectrum, or things that are so microscopic we cannot see. This does not mean that they don't exist. They're just beyond us, beyond our sight. Same thing for hearing as well. There are many, we hear to specific
range of vibrations, yes.
So beyond that, again, we cannot listen and so on. So since you cannot contain the divine with your sight, you cannot contain the divine with time or with place, then definitely you cannot contain his wisdom. So it's illogical, actually, using logic, it's illogical to try to analyze the wisdom of the divine with your own very limited wisdom. How do you see that?
Okay, I like that, because Aristotle, when he talked about those all the objectives of the divine, it was not new to me when I read them long time ago or when I studied them again, because the same objectives and the same adjectives of these, the same adjectives are used in the prayers to the god Amun in the temples of ancient Egypt 3,000, 4,000 years ago, which is even before Aristotle or Plato came to with any of their ideas. So in order to describe this power, the divine power, or call it the infinite power, the timeless power, to describe it, you have to give it those adjectives that cannot be measured by our human mind. And these things would apply to any god. If you take the same, these descriptions of a god, or the adjectives applied to a god in the center of Africa, for the tribes there, they will see him the same way. If you use it in the Latin America, the Amazon, the tribes there will see it the same way as well. So here is Aristotle is just mentioning to us the powers. He was trying to justify what he can see around him in the universe. So to justify this movement of the planets and the sun and the galaxies and whatever, it needs a power that we cannot measure, because with our capabilities we cannot measure this power. So we have to personify or to create something that justify these things to us. So that's what he did exactly. He used his logical mind to define the illogical things.
So you know, like for example, like miracles in many religions, including the Abrahamic religions. So if we talk about the Abrahamic religions, for instance, there is like something like the splitting of the Red Sea with just a staff, with stick or staff. The like walking on water, raising the dead, ascension into heaven, on the back of a creature that is like a flying horse, which also is, yeah, very similar to the Pegasus, which is the Greek horse with wings. And we also had the winged bull in Mesopotamia. Again, things like walking in water and all these things, again, you find a lot of them in other, pre-Abrahamic religions as well. But people would tell you, why do you think that these things are illogical? Because today, you and I know that humans landed on the moon. You know that humans have recently, visited Mars. They haven't visited Mars themselves, but they've
sent a machine there. Yes.
Exactly, machines, yes, probes, etc.
Yes. Yes.
And humans today, they can see the far ends of the universe. you holding like just a gadget, a little thing in your hand today made of metal, you can communicate through video with someone living in Australia while you're in Canada. So if the created was capable of doing this, why do you think it is so hard for the creator to make these miracles? It's very logical. If you, and you're just a mere creator, created, you were able to do these things. Why is it so hard for the creator? Because which one is harder, really? This creator, even according to logic and according to someone like Aristotle, is the power responsible for this wide universe with its incredible structure, with the astronomical, like distances and amounts. He created the macro world with giant stars. He created the micro world with positrons, with microbes, and so on and so forth. So is the creation and doing of these incredible things harder, or the splitting of the sea, or making someone walk on water, or making someone ascend to heaven? So it's very logical that he did that.
This is a very hypothetical question, by the way, and also it is it's based on the principle of Aristotle, the syllogism as well, which is using a certain word to describe or to justify another thing. I would use something here is very different than Aristotle as well, but I would come back to it again. So I would say that extraordinary situations or conditions require extraordinary explanations. So walking on the water is an extraordinary incident. So it needs extraordinary explanation for it. So if we go back now to what you said about man can made already many things, technology is huge, but do you know that we can justify everything in it, logically as well, because it was a progress of science and technology and research. And the more we learn, the more we can create as well. Or I would say we can assemble and invent. But the examples you gave of the divine powers, splitting the sea, walking in the water, flying to heaven with the winged horse. Based on science and knowledge that we have right now, the three of these things defy science, defy nature, and defy the world or the universe that the Creator himself gave us. When he gave us the universe, he didn't give us anything that we cannot interpret by science and mind later on. So dividing the sea is not possible, according to the science, but also if the Creator wants us to give us this miracle, he would give us the knowledge to explain it. That's how I see it. Again, walking on the water, the same thing, and the voyage to the heavens. But if these elements or these examples or these incidents could be used to help convincing the majority of the receivers of these things about how the Creator is almighty, to make them accept the idea itself, then according to this philosophy of logic, welcome for it. I would welcome it based on the fact that I want to explain the unexplainable to the people. So use a logic explanation for non-logical things.
Definitely this like talk and this argument can go forever. And actually, thank you very much for being here again, because it's very useful for our viewers and I believe for ourselves, for anyone, to be always aware of the two sides. And this split or these two different views are very, very common in today's world. There are millions of people who would think this way and that way. There are millions of people who tell you that, yeah, these things would defy all logic and all rules of physics. On the other hand, others would say no, but he is the creator of the rules. So he can break the rules if he wants to. But again, last but not least, this might be the last question, but I think it's a very, very important one, is there a way of reaching some kind of a consensus, some kind of a middle ground between the people who are strictly logical and people who are orthodox in their religious view? Is there any middle ground that they can reach?
Absolutely. There is one thing that would make those two groups meet together, which is the human conscience. Human conscience is the element that would unite everybody and would even bring the extreme parties together on a mutual grounds. And this is the human conscience actually was or started, as James Henry Breasted said, in the dawn of conscience of humanity by the ancient Egyptians, 7,000 years ago.
Well, as usual, Imad Barsoum, it's a pleasure to have you. Thank you very much for being with us tonight, and really looking forward to having you time and again.
Sure, and I'm very delighted. Thank you so much for this wonderful time. And there are so many things to be said yet. So hopefully there's time in the future to discuss.
Absolutely. It's always
Thank you.
Thank you very much again.
Thank you.
And dear viewers, if we were to sort of come to a conclusion here, like my last question to Imad was about a consensus. And if we explore what Aristotle said, so he talked about that the divine, or not the divine, he did not call it the divine, but the first cause, is the power that possesses the essence of beauty, of truth, of wisdom, you know, and of goodness as well. And again, this is, I believe, this can be the very common ground for all people who believe in religion or who do not believe in religion. Because if you want to call this superpower God, or if you want to call it Mother Nature, or you want to call it the first cause, the first spark, whatever you want to call that first, cause, this first cause, like we said, is omniscient, knows everything, is omnipresent, everywhere, is omnipotent, controlling, invincible. No one can overcome it. So definitely this power knows that you and I are different, knows that everyone is different from the other. However, it still gives air for us to breathe, gives water for us to drink, gives food for us to sustain ourselves, to everyone, regardless. And then some people would say, but there are some curses and some like things that might befall, this group of people because they did not believe. Well, actually, all these catastrophes have befallen everyone. There's not a single nation that did not have a catastrophe, and so on. So let's not be more royal than royalty itself. I believe the biggest problem of people is trying to be more royal than royalty itself. This divine, or this superpower, knows the differences, and if he thinks that one group is not good enough, he could easily just wipe them off the face of earth. But he's not doing it. So apparently, it is his will. Whether you call it God or superpower, first cause, Mother Nature. Let's not play the role of the first cause. Let's not play the role of God. Because if he is all wise, like what religion would tell us, or what logic would tell us, like someone like Aristotle, he knows what is best. He doesn't need us to do his job for him. And he wants us, if we really want to unite and become at one with this divine, we should follow his major attributes, which is the truth, goodness, beauty, and justice. Dear viewers, thank you very much for being with us, and until we meet again, please take good care.